Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk. With 2022 behind us, let me say thank you so very, very much. First, to all of our great guests that provide the exceptional content for this podcast, and to our ever-growing number of listeners and supporters of the Public Relations Review podcast. At the close of 2022, we now have listeners in over 2,000 cities located in 123 countries around the world. Here in the U.S., this podcast has been voted one of the best PR podcasts in America. Because we continue to provide skilled professionals that can present you with excellent content on a wide range of PR topics and the large listener downloads of usable information we deliver, this podcast was awarded a Best PR Podcast trophy from the Nashville chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. We have also won a Best Business Podcast trophy from the American Business Association. I will continue to seek some of the best professionals from all across America and a few from foreign nations to bring you the kind of professional information that is useful to your business and to expand your knowledge about public relations. These professionals are delighted to share this information with you, and it appears from our continued growth that you enjoy listening to them. So once again, thank you so very much for being a listener. Please let your friends and colleagues know about the Public Relations Review podcast. We are available on Amazon, Apple, Audible, Spotify, Google, iHeart, and another 30 or more sites, making us available worldwide. So thank you. And now on to the podcast.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review podcast and to our listeners all across America and around the world. Now, I have a very special group as our guest today. They are students in the Public Relations program at Eastern Michigan University. This all began when I read an article in a public relations newspaper that said that EMU students were taking steps to both raise the visibility and boost the participation in their public relations curriculum. So I thought this was unusual, and it got my attention, so I reached out and had a chat with Professor Lolita Cummings. So today, she and several members of her PR program are with us today from Ypsilanti, Michigan. So with that, I'll now ask Professor Cummings to introduce herself and each of the students to introduce themselves. So Professor Cummings, you're on.
Hello, Peter, and thank you so much for inviting us to your Public Relations Review podcast. I am Lolita Cummings, a professor of public relations at Eastern Michigan, and I have been there for 28 years now.
Okay. Next.
Hi, my name is Nina Scarpelli. I am a third-year student at Eastern pursuing a PR major with a marketing minor. And Eastern has been an aspiration for mine in the university, and the PR program is where I call home. So I'm glad that, and I appreciate for your invite for us to be on this podcast, sir.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, Peter. My name is Erin. Thank you for allowing us to make the podcast. I am a senior at Eastern Michigan University, and I study media studies and journalism with a minor in PR.
Okay. And the next person.
Hi, Peter. My name is Anaya Fuller. I am a senior majoring in public relations with a minor in sport management, and thank you for having us on your podcast.
Well, great. Well, let me ask that question, the first question. Since I read that article, how did it come about that somebody decided we needed to have more people in the program and perhaps more people needed to know about the program? How did that happen?
I'll get us started. I think it was what has changed so much of the world for all of us right now. It was COVID. Because when COVID hit in March of 2020, our program was fine. We've always been a fairly small program with about 90 or so majors and minors, which is small, fairly small for a university of our size. But when COVID came, everything at the university shut down. And We had our classes remote. We held our classes remotely for almost 2 years. And in that time, we didn't have an opportunity to interact with our students in the way in which we normally do. I had always had a marketing and visibility campaign going continuously for our program because it's always good to let students at the campus know that public relations is an option, let them know what public relations is because many students often do not, so that they could see if it was best for them. But because we weren't on campus, there was no one doing that. So when I got back on campus and started to teach in person in September, that was just September of this year, and started to look at our enrollment numbers, I was concerned. And I had a feeling that I knew that there would be something there because the enrollment at the entire university is lower than it has been ever. And it's not just Eastern Michigan, it's all the universities, or almost all the universities in our state. The larger ones, Michigan State, University of Michigan, their enrollments have not been affected. But all of the other mid-sized universities, which is what we are, their enrollment numbers are down. But it was something that, of course, I couldn't and I didn't even want to look away from. It was something that we had to address. And I would happen to be teaching a writing for public relations course that has mostly juniors and seniors in it. And it was a fairly small course, about 8, 9 students, and decided, you know what, instead of working on, hypothetical assignments, fictional assignments, we're going to do some real-life academic service learning, and we're going to use the public relations program, the one that they are familiar with, the one that they love, the one that they support, and we're going to use that as our class project and get others to know about it and to love it as well. And once I put that out, the students took off and they ran with it, and I could not be more proud of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, now that we understand what the motive was, how did the students go about designing the program? Let's talk about that.
Okay. So what we did, and then I'm going to let them tell you exactly what they did, but what I did was I laid it out to them just as I have just laid it out for your listeners and said, what are we going to do? You all are in the program. I want you to market and to promote to your peers who think very similarly to what you think, who are looking for what you have. How do you get that going? And Nina, one of the students on this podcast, took a dry erase marker, went up to the front of the board, and asked her classmates, okay, what do we do? What tools, what strategies do we use to try and bring more visibility to our programs to try and increase their numbers? And by the time that one class period was over, that board was full of ideas of what they wanted to do. But of course, as we know, with effective public relations programs, you don't start in the middle with your actions. Every public relations program starts with research and it ends with evaluation. So once we had up there what we wanted to do, then we took a step back and said, okay, what don't we know? What research do we need to conduct to find out why the program numbers are so low, what the other students want, how do students get their information? That way we'll know what communication venues to try and communicate with them, all of those questions. And so then the students, they created the surveys, they implemented them, they asked the right questions, and then we went further.
Mm-hmm. It sounds good so far. Now, what are some of the next steps that you took?
Nina, you want to start?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. So the way Lolita put it was perfectly. As from a student's perspective, walking into writing for PR class, I think my first notice was noticing how little students were in my class. It was only about 8 of us, and a lot of my thought came into I thought there would be more PR majors in talk or more people in the PR program. So when she brought up this task of the campaign and we all willingly took it, we wanted to take it in our own hands. So we really reflected personally what was the reason why we got into PR. What do we think about public relations in that aspect? So it was a really big deal for us to definitely do the research honed in through the survey, figuring out questions like what are different grade levels, what other majors other individuals are partaking in that could be similar to PR, such as business or marketing, and see why is PR not on the top of many students' heads at first. And we really did find out that a lot of students just don't know PR exists. That was definitely something that we both all collaborated on, that we need to make it heard. What is PR? What is public relations? What is the career field? So that's where we definitely took the lead on it. And if you want to continue on how we did that, it was definitely an experience for all of us, and we all partake. I'll hand it over to Erin to speak on her part.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed doing the surveys. What we did was we printed out like multiple surveys, and we went around campus, just kind of, handing the surveys to students and kind of gauging their interest in PR. And I would have to say it was very interesting to see how little people knew about PR. And so my mind went to, so nobody know about it. So this is why maybe the PR program numbers are down. I know it was COVID, but just that as well. And then we kind of just took it from there. So that was really nice.
Okay.
Yes, I just want to jump back to when we were in class and we had to write on the board. Like, we knew what PR was. Well, we knew what PR was, and Nina was writing on the board. And I remember like it being a circle, and in the middle of the circle it was key ideas and actions. And then around the circle, Nina and the rest of the class, we were just writing down like ideas for the PR program and how can we improve it and who did we want to collaborate or connect with. So we said things like we can do activities such as interact and role play. We can do information sessions for more students to learn more about the PR program, like information tables and having students define what PR is. We can reach out to the audience, and there's two different audiences that we reach out to. We reached out to college, and we also reached out to high school and professors as well. We said that we can collaborate with other majors and student orgs for them to get an idea of knowing what PR is. And we did a lot of campaigning, flyers, press releases, mass emails, and we also reached out to the media, such as our public relations Instagram page, just for everyone to be aware and know that we're doing this campaign, and knowing that we wanted to increase the numbers of our PR program.
Okay. Now, when you said you reached out to the media, you said that was your on-campus newspaper. How about the newspaper surrounding your city? And if it was just the campus newspaper, what sort of message were you delivering in that newspaper?
Erin, do you want to take that? Because
yes, I will. So I wrote this is Erin speaking. I wrote the article, but my classmates gave me the push to do so. So basically, I went to the editor-in-chief for the Eastern Echo here, and I sat down and was like, hey, so I'm part of the PR program. We're doing this thing trying to increase the enrollment numbers for the program, and I think we're really making progress here, so I want to write about it. And the editor-in-chief was like, okay, great. We'll love to hear about it. So wrote that article, got it out, and, yeah, it was good. It was successful, I would say.
Let me back up a second now. When you said you wrote the article, tell me about the message in the article that you wrote. That's what I also wanted to hear. What was the message you were delivering to the readers?
So I would say, so our goal was to increase the enrollment, but I think that, well, as I wrote about Nina, who went to the high schools, we were going to the high schools and trying to talk to these high school students, just kind of getting the word out there just past our university and talking to these high school students and telling them about it. I feel like we kind of really touched these high school students in a way, and yeah, I think we did good on that. So
let me jump in there real quick, because one of the things that we had some conversation about was, what's newsworthy, right? I mean, so we have news values, because not everything is newsworthy. And so we had some discussions in class about why is this news? And the students, I think, did a great job in drafting that message. And I think this may be what you're getting a little bit closer to, Peter, is drafting the message, drafting the headline, so that people could see that it was news. Because what's different in there? It's the whole, dog bites man, that's not news. But man bites dog, now you have yourself a story. And in here, it wasn't, that the enrollment was down, because the enrollment is down not just at our university, but down over the state, and it's down over the country. But the news here was that the students in the program that they were already enrolled in were taking the lead to try and get others to become aware of that program and to see if that was the right program for them. And so the students were then able to, draft the headline, which said, EMU public relations students take action with PR interest campaign. That was the news, and that was what they put into the lead, and I think that's why it was successful.
Let me add to that, talking about very experienced, because what you just said was a very, very important thing. Everything is not news. What is newsworthy? And as a PR professional, I've had that face me many, many times. So now, how am I going to get this into the media? That is part of the job of a good PR person. And one of the benefits that you have, I mean, I don't know if you've worked in the media in terms of newspapers or news or whatever, that you'll understand that just because you like it and think it's interesting does not mean that the media is going to like it and understand it. So part of a good media relations or public relations person is, how do I make this newsworthy? So I think that as I listen to that, and from based on my personal experiences, that is a huge lesson that needs to be learned by all PR people, particularly in the beginning.
My students got it. Thank you. I'm sure you guys remember, we talked about the headline, and they were the ones that formulated that headline, and they were adamant. I'm really proud of them because, I treated this almost like a mini PR agency, and the PR program was their client. They had the creative meetings where they came up with the ideas, but they also had to defend it. And they were able to defend the reason why they chose the wording that they did, and I think they were right on target.
Mm-hmm. Well, some other things, and a real quick brief thing about my background. As I said, I've been in public relations for a long, long time. At the time, I just didn't have the formal training, but because once I recognized I wanted something, I found a way to get it done. Part of my background is that, believe it or not, without knowing a thing about it, one of my first major PR jobs was with the National Education Association. Now, because I had been in radio and some other things, I wound up being media relations manager for that national organization. From there, I went up to Capitol Hill. Of all places, me in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill. Didn't know a thing about legislation, but I knew something about PR. So what I did was I actually went to a lot of the news people and asked them, what are they looking for? And they would tell me. And what some of the news people told me this, they said, if you want the press to take your stuff, your piece, give them everything they need. In other words, it's got to be a decent story, the details, interviews, everything that's ready to go for them, because a lot of news people aren't that aggressive, and the more you can bring to them, the better off you are. Mm-hmm.
That's very true. So we talk about one of the things that I stress that my students aren't always really excited about, but AP style. That's something very basic, but if the closer you can bring a news story or a news release and write it in a way in which it's going to appear in a news story, the more successful you're likely to be in getting that story placed. Mm-hmm. And so we do talk about writing an inverted pyramid, capturing that lead, localizing that lead, writing in AP style, because those are the things that are going to make the journalist's job easier. And if you can make their job easier, your job is likely to be more successful.
Now, how did you go about measuring the success of the campaign? Because I understood that, as you said, that you may have gone into some high schools as well. So how did you measure the different components of what you did?
Yes, Nina actually did a presentation in a high school, and that's included in the article. And there are other components of the campaign as well. But what we're doing is we want to give it an entire year, because 3 months in a semester just isn't enough for us to measure the success of the entire campaign. And the campaign is going to continue with a class of graduating seniors. It's a capstone class to the public relations major that begins in January and going to end in April. So we're going to actually measure the success then, but here's what we're going to measure. We're going to start the heavy part of the social media campaign in January. So that will run from January until April. And we're going to measure the engagement that we had on our social media pages, which is the Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at the beginning of the semester and at the end of the semester. We can very easily measure the number of likes and how many increases that we've had. We're also going to measure the number of majors and minors that we have in the program that we started with in September and then that we end with in April. Right now, we have around 65, 67 majors and minors combined. Our objective, because we know that we need a measurable objective in order to truly evaluate the success of the campaign. The objective is to have an increase of at least 10%. We're hoping for more than that, but at least 10%. And so that gives us somewhere between 6 and 7 additional majors and minors that we're hoping to see a difference in between September and between April. But I can already tell you anecdotally, I've already had students, because of this, the work the students are doing right now, I've already had about 3 students contact me, ask me for academic advising because they want to change their major and their minor all to public relations. So we're already on our way there.
Well, that sounds really, really great. So any other anecdotal comments you'd like to make about this? Because this is, I'm glad to hear about this, actually.
Do you guys have anything you want to add?
I will add an additional thought. I just wanted to say, my favorite thing about doing this campaign was definitely having it done in our own hands. Lolita definitely gave us the steering wheel to the ship, and we had to guide our way through. It was definitely an experience. This is my first time having a PR class in person. So to finally be able to have this experience and this relatability of feeling like working in, how she put it, as a mini PR firm, it was definitely an experience. And I think I can vouch for Erin and Anaya. We'll definitely take this knowledge and use this later on in life in the public relations fields that we're going into. But it was just seeing the influence of working hard towards a campaign and already seeing some results. When I visit that high school, it was just so intriguing to see high school students, even though they are a few years into what they want to really go into for their lives. It was interesting to see them intrigued. They never knew about it. What? PR? You have a stance of what something's good, what is right in a business or marketing, or it was very innovatively thoughtful to think of how high school students would have reacted, and they reacted in such a positive way, and it exceeded my expectations, and they kept asking me questions at the presentation, more about what does a PR person do, more in depth, and just seeing the little things that we've done through this campaign has had such a big impact so far. So I would just have to say that's my favorite part of participating in this, and I thank Lolita on giving us this challenge, and we took it and we did it very willingly, and I'm proud of us all.
Well, good.
I am very proud of them as well. They really did an amazing job. I was telling them, it's hard to quantify, if they were working in an actual PR agency to assess a dollar value, but it's very valuable, the work that they did. And I also want to mention that it's a collaborative effort across the university. In public relations, it's the second word is relations. It's relationships. It's collaborations. And so we reached out to our registrar at the university, and because the students had created themselves had created a very professional looking flyer, and the university registrar sent that out to all of the university's undecided majors and minors so that they would know that the public relations was an option, and they would know, what courses are involved and what the career path is, and what skills and abilities, if you like or you're good at, you might want to do. And then also when Nina went out to the high school, she was able to take giveaways to those high school students that our athletics department supplied us with pom poms and T-shirts and water bottles from the athletics department. So I'm really proud of how everyone at the university comes together to try and make sure that that success is a part of what we all do, and that we help everyone to get there.
Mm-hmm. Let me just add a couple of other things that I've heard, because of what I'm hearing so far, I think is very positive and the way to go. Just in terms of learning experiences, obviously, Professor Cummings, you've perhaps talked to them about getting internships, which I think is hugely important, because that puts you in the real world. And not only are you doing the work, but then you can be evaluated in how you do the work. The other thing that I did that I think was hugely helped me catapult myself in terms of PR, and I actually did one of my podcasts on this several years ago, is when you get a chance, work in a political campaign in the communications department. Why is that important? Because a lot of times PR is about pressure. You need to learn how to work in a pressure-filled environment because it's hugely important. Learn to deal with people. How do you handle talking to the mayor or one of the members of Congress or a city councilman, those kinds of things? When I worked in the presidential campaign, believe me, I learned a lot as a result of that. So, I mean, seriously, I'm dealing with the governor of Delaware. I met Joe Biden when I was in the Clinton campaign. I was in Delaware. I ran the communications for the state. So, but then you come back from that. I mean, now you have really, been in the trenches and done some serious work. Because having done it at that level, you won't start there, but at least perhaps on the city council level locally, that's the way to get in and get your feet wet. Because now you've got to learn how to also prepare responses in a very short manner of time. How do you decide which information to get out and which not to get out? So it's a lot of things that have to happen in a very short period of time. So keeping up the regimen that you have done thus far, I certainly salute you and Professor Cummings for the way you've gone about this.
Well, thank you. And thank you for sharing that advice. I mean, I often have guest speakers come into my class because I want, the students obviously to hear from professionals who are in a lot of different areas, but I've not had one who worked in a political campaign or in the political arena. So I will definitely have to do this. So thank you so much for that tip, Peter.
Well, I'll volunteer for that. If you need a speaker, I've done that virtually. I've as a result of this podcast and that I have and being in radio, I have no problem getting in front of people to speak. And here I'm in Nashville now, but part of what I have done is I have gone to I don't know how many universities to speak to students in public relations classes, because it's one thing to do your work in the class with your classmates, but then when you graduate, the real world is looking at you. So you need to be prepared for that. And let me say this too, because one of the things that I did when I was at the Department of Education was I had a chance to bring in interns. I was surprised at the range of attitudes about interns. Some maybe wanted to do as little work as they could. There were some that couldn't wait to get started, and whatever you give me, I'm going to take it on. That's the one I want right there. I want that one right there who has takes it on. Because if you're not interested in doing the work, we don't need you here, because this is about producing something. Remember this: people pay you for what you can do, not necessarily for what you know. So once you show up, you need to have some skills and background, and believe me, political background skills that you worked in a campaign pays off tremendously. So wherever you can get some hands-on skills, take advantage of it.
Wow. Well, I am excited about the information that you're sharing with my students right now. And so I am, as we speak, writing a sticky note to contact you later to ask you if you will share with my classes next semester sometime between January and April. I would absolutely love it because it's so valuable. They need that.
Not a problem. I've already been invited, as a matter of fact, for that note that I put in the PRSA about the fact that, by the way, the podcast, Spotify let me know that this podcast is among the 30% of the most followed podcasts that they have. So I was really, really excited about that.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Congratulations.
Well,
that's so good.
Seriously, I had no plan to do this, but when I say worldwide, I mean worldwide, based on the data that I have. This podcast is heard by listeners in 122 countries. And what does that mean in terms of cities? 1,900 plus cities around the world. Somebody's listening to this podcast. So I never planned on it. It just happened. So I let people know that, starting out in my basement, so to speak, and my first podcast was me speaking to nobody.
Well, that's how you get started, right?
That's how you get started, and have a plan as to how am I going to grow this thing. But anyway, I certainly be more than happy to do a virtual presentation to your students. You just give me a call and we can make that happen.
I will definitely do that. Thank you so much for the offer.
Well, let me ask you, are there any closing remarks that you have before we call it a day?
Do you all have any?
I just wanted to thank you again for this opportunity to be on this podcast. I think, speaking on behalf of Aaron, me, and Anaya, it is a definite opportunity for us to be able to say we've been on a podcast. So it's definitely an experience. And thank you for recognizing our efforts and work on our campaign that we've done by looking at that newspaper that one day and noticing us. So we appreciate your recognition and what we've been doing.
Well, thank you so very much for being guest on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to add something. This is Anaya. I just wanted to say thank you for having us on this podcast. It's truly inspirational to listen to somebody that has a podcast that's related or that is about public relations. You know, you can't find too many podcasts like that. So very inspirational, and I will be listening to your podcast more.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah,
all
I
right.
just want to say I wrote the article. I didn't think that it would get the attention of like you and your podcast or anybody of that sort. So thank you as well. That was very motivational, I have to say. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. Let me just tell my guests today that they've been listening to the students in the public relations program for Eastern Michigan University. And if they enjoyed the podcast, I certainly would like to get a note from you that you've appreciated, and also to share it with your colleagues that you did listen to the information about Eastern Michigan University students on the Public Relations Review podcast. So thank you again for listening, and always stay with us for the next edition of the Public Relations Review podcast.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk speaking. Now, first of all, thank you so very much for listening to the podcast. Now, I am very excited to let you know that the podcast is now available on Amazon Alexa. You know the drill. Simply say, Alexa, play Public Relations Review podcast, and she'll take it from there. And again, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy the program, please become a subscriber. Now, on to the podcast.